It's a particular pleasure for me today to have a resident that I have gotten to know through his 18 years of residency here, and who I admire greatly and have read not only his latest book, Intact, about his unit that landed during the D-Day invasion from the 5th Rangers Company Division, but I've gotten to know John personally. That's John Raaen. John, our speaker today, is General Raaen, a resident of Mayflower Villas. General Raaen is the son of an Army officer, is a graduate of the Military Academy at West Point, class of January of 1943. As most of you know, he served in World War II as a Ranger Company commander, but what you may not know is that after the war he stayed in active duty for another 34 years. In those 34 years he served in research development jobs, gradually morphing into logistics and procurement jobs as he rose to higher positions in the military. Just to give you an idea of the responsibilities, when he commanded the Army Armament Command, he had 8 manufacturing arsenals under his command, 65 ammunition plants. Many of them were in mothballs, and over 65,000 military, civilian, and contractor employees. When he commanded the Defense Fuel Supply Center, his procurement authority was over $20 billion. Today he will talk to you about some of the things through his years that he's learned about management. So with that, I take great pride in introducing to you General John Raaen.
Thank you, David. I see you're a good Toastmaster. You wouldn't leave the podium or the lectern until I got here.
I won't leave until you're here.
Okay. Thank you, David. And thank you very much for that fine introduction. When David asked me to talk to this august group, I thought, what can I talk about? And I said, if I talk to them about D-Day or about one of the World War II battles or campaigns, at least half of you would have the right to get up and walk out because you've heard me so many times before. And the other half would have the right to get up and walk out because they wouldn't understand a thing I'm saying, because these things all happened 2 decades before they were born. So I muddled over all this. What can I talk about? And then I remembered some notes that I'd written about 2 years before. The notes were entitled, "What Did I Learn Through My 50-Some Years of Management?" It was something I wrote to amuse myself, and amuse it did, because it brought back so many memories, and most of them humorous memories, of things that happened to me. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. We all know that bread is the staff of life. Without bread, civilizations fall. Well, at least kingdoms. Your Majesty, the people have no bread, they are starving. Let them eat cake. The French monarchy fell, or so legend goes, in 1792. Fast forward to 1953. Thank you, Cecilia. I was a brand new major working as a junior manager in ammunition research and development, and I just put out a budget for the next year's artillery ammunition development program. I knew I'd get some static from the engineers, and here it comes, Lenny Katz waving a copy of the budget coming down the aisle. He was about 5'1" and left-handed, as most ammunition engineers are, and I don't know why, it's just the way it is. They're left-handed. Major, I have got to have $50,000 to finish my project, and you've given me nothing in this budget. Lenny, you have finished your project. It meets all the requirements of the Army. The Army is happy with it. The project is terminated. But Major, I can improve it so much with $50,000. No, you cannot improve it with $50,000. I don't have any money to give you. The project is terminated. Case closed. Lenny drew himself up to his 5'1" height. I was 6'2" in those days. And stared at me and said, Major, bread is nothing but uncooked toast. He turned and walked away. And that's the first lesson. Bread is nothing but uncooked toast. You can always improve on a project, on a product, if you have the money and the time. But that money and time kind of preclude a lot of product improvement. Never suboptimize. This is lesson 2. Never suboptimize. Too many managers try to solve their little problems when they should be thinking of solving their boss's problems. They're wrong. To try to optimize for the highest management level you can imagine. For me, at my major commands, I could usually find out what was the best solution for the Army, and failing that for my bosses at the Army Materiel Command. But never, and I mean never, did I maximize for the benefit of my organization at the expense of anybody above me. I remember in the late 70s I had to procure some anthracite coal for U.S. forces in Europe. I selected mines from the Appalachian region of our East Coast. Wrong. The Department of Defense wanted German coal. It was cheaper. There were no overseas shipping costs. There were shorter in-country costs. The DoD wanted to show NATO how nice we were, how we would select a German product over an American product. Carpet time. I should have expected it since I refused to change the selection from American coal to German coal, and I was on the carpet. I finally had to tell them, okay, you change it, but don't blame me for the outcome. What outcome? What consequences? Well, the United States merchant fleet has only 4 colliers in its entire fleet. If the contract goes to Germany's mines, those 4 colliers will be scrapped, and you'll have none. And sooner or later, you're going to have to buy coal from Appalachia again, and when you do, there will be no colliers to ship it. Foreign colliers will already be engaged on long-time contracts. Well, I won that one by optimizing for the good of the United States, and it was a great victory, believe me. The next thought, always do the best job you can, no matter how odious the job is. Combine that with never suboptimize and you get, don't consider how a solution affects yourself, consider how it affects your superiors. They'll reward you amply if you do a good job for them. Now, every selection, particularly personnel selections, your supervisor will reward you if you have done a good job for him. And I left out some very important words. Every selection is an evaluation. When I was in St. Louis, I had a lot of labor problems. In one case, a woman with 10 years of experience was not selected for a job, and a man with 5 years experience was selected. She went to the union steward. He wrote a complaint. Ordinarily, complaints like this are handed to the lawyers, and they pull out form 1, 2, 3, 4, fill it out, and give it to the union. But in this case, the complaint was written in longhand. And when I saw it later, it was the most beautiful cursive writing I have ever seen in my life. There wasn't a thing out of place. The lines were the proper thickness. Everything was beautiful about it. Well, they sent it to my desk because it was unusual to them too, and I was glad they did. I called Mr. Perry, the labor shop steward, in and complimented him on his penmanship, commenting that you've got to be so meticulous, so dedicated to do a job like this. And then I explained to him, most selections for clerical jobs are made by supervisors. Who would you select? A person who always made the supervisor's job more difficult, or the one who lightened the supervisor's load at all times? He got the point, and I had no more labor problems with that particular shop. I asked Mr. Perry one more thing. Did he see the difference between 10 years of experience and 1 year of experience repeated 10 times? And he got that point too. And then there's the Jolly Green Giant syndrome. And let me clear my throat. When I was in Berlin, we had a young captain who was a translator for one of the major staffs, and it came his time to leave Berlin. And that's pretty normal in the Army. Well, of course, his supervisor put in a request for an equally qualified officer. There was no one in the pipeline who could speak 3 languages, let alone translate them. Before things exploded completely, I had to explain that when the captain arrived in Berlin, he could only speak German. But in the 3 years he'd been there, he had learned Russian, and he had also learned French. Well, I finally had to tell the supervisor, train your new man who speaks German as the job requires, and maybe you'll find one who is able to speak 3 languages by the end of 3 years. That's the Jolly Green Giant syndrome. Now, everything I ever had to know about management I learned from a thing called a cook's worksheet. How many of you have been in the Army and know what a cook's worksheet is? It's what the mess sergeant writes down on the next meal he's going to serve. When I was in Fort Dix, waiting for my company to deploy overseas in World War II, I was ordered to the Cooks and Bakers School, a detestable turn of events. It turned out that dehydrated foods were being introduced into the Army's food supply chain, and everybody who had a mess under them had to go to Cooks and Bakers School to learn how to process and how to sell dehydrated food to the soldiers. It was there that I was introduced to the cook's worksheet. Menus, what's in the pantry, buying needed items, food preparation, cooking times. These all translate into the terms that you understand of planning, requirements, purchasing, scheduling, priorities, lead time, allocation of resources, you name it. Every one of them is treated in the cook's worksheet. And everything has to be on the dining table at the right time. Now, things that were tried in the past and failed may now work with newer technology. After he retired from the Army, my father became vice president for research at Universal Oil Products, a little company outside Chicago. He was a pretty smart old codger, and in his initial briefings, he asked that they also talk to him about projects that had failed in research. And they did. And after the briefing, he ordered them to redo about 10 or 15 research projects with new technology. They worked. The company made a mint. And in that same line, failed experiments are not always failures. You can always learn something. Our first test of the guided artillery missile, or shell rather, failed. Long faces. Cheer up, said I. You proved the propellant charge was properly designed. You proved the shell will work in a standard gun and not overload the recoil system. And later you found the cause of the failure, a sheared screw easily fixed. It was really a great success for a first try. Now, don't compartment knowledge. Use everything you know to solve a problem. And don't limit yourself to the body of knowledge that relates to the problem. Biology may solve an engineering problem. Another way of putting it in modern terms is think outside the box. The formal organization does little more than put up a roadblock for a staff officer or any kind of middle management type. It's the informal organization that's the way to get things done. Develop friends among your counterparts. When I left ORDTA, the organization where I was Lenny Katz's boss, I was offered large sums of money for my Rolodex. It contained my analysis of the informal ammunition organization. Knowledge is power. Unfortunately, some people use that knowledge as a route to power by withholding it until a favorable quid pro quo is found. Your shared knowledge, and I emphasize the word shared, Your shared knowledge is the basis for your position in the informal organization. Never undercut an associate. To do so makes an enemy. And to be successful and get your job done, you need friends. Friends everywhere. I help you, you help me. And always take time to help others. You'll be rewarded somewhere down the line. Sometimes you're stuck with a worthless subordinate. Tough luck, you play the cards you're dealt. Find something he can do effectively. And I found a colonel once, I found him something to do effectively. It may be below his pay grade, but if it's equal to his abilities, you're ahead. Listen, listen, listen. You do not have all the good ideas. Listen to your subordinates. Listen to your contemporaries. Listen to the competition, and above all, listen to the boss. And learn to listen when people speak. Analyze, categorize, pay attention. Don't sit there just waiting for your chance to speak, or worse, organizing your rebuttal. Toastmasters teaches a wonderful skill, and most people, including myself, would profit from joining it. But listening is even more important than speaking. Sorry, Elizabeth. We spend between 70 and 80% of our day in communicating. 45% of our communication time is spent listening. Not hearing, listening. Only 30% is spent in speaking. 16% in reading and 9% in writing. Learn to listen. The internet is full of listening information. Never drink alcohol during duty hours. Yes, one wine, one beer does dull your abilities and your judgment. I've seen it over and over again. My father told me never even drink after dinner, and I wish I'd listened to him. Things would have been better, believe me. When I was in Berlin, I visited a friend down in what we call the Zone, the 7th Army headquarters. It was in Stuttgart. We went to the officers' club to have lunch, and while there, I noticed a sort of a disreputable group of about 10 people. The hams were irregular, there was too much makeup, the husbands were semi-shaven, obviously already in their cups. I asked, who are those people? And I was told they're in the Beta Club. I'd never heard of a Beta Club. What is the Beta Club? Booze is the answer. Every one of those people was a clear loser, husbands and wives. Booze and business simply do not mix. Enough said about that. Balloon squeezins, the law of unintended consequences. Always when making a decision, look for what can go wrong. Now, this isn't to deter decision making. It only prepares you for unfavorable outcomes. When you squeeze a balloon, what happens? It comes out in unknown directions, right? Okay, when I was in Berlin during the occupation after the war, we had problems with the enlisted men skipping training and going to the enlisted clubs for a beer or for a coffee. The military solution to this problem is for the first sergeants of the companies to go to the enlisted clubs and take names. I will not complete that phrase. Some of you in the military remember the rest of the phrase. Now, that's what the commanding general ordered, and what do you think happened? The enlisted men stopped going to the enlisted clubs. That's a balloon squeezing. But here's another balloon squeezing. Instead, they started going to the German civilian clubs, and what do you think happened then? Problems with the German police, problems with the German citizens of Berlin. The biggest thing that happened was the enlisted clubs went broke due to no attendance. That took only 2 months, believe it or not, to have them go broke. That was balloon squeezing, the way I see it. Tell your people what you want. Don't tell them how to do it. In the military, we call them, give them mission-type orders. In the rare cases that they need help, they'll come to you for more guidance. They'll ask for it. Cultivate that feeling in your subordinates. You can come to me without fear. I am the good shepherd. Now, no manager can do everything that he has to do, and that's why he has subordinates. So I tell you, delegate. But the warning is, Since you cannot delegate responsibility, be very careful to whom you delegate authority. My feeling about workaholics is they are inefficient at best, incompetent at worst. They can't do a job in the time that others could do it, and they ruin the morale of an office, particularly when the boss is the workaholic. And last, this is a thought I always try to give to young officers when I talk to them. Confidence is what you have before you understand the problem. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all. I'm tied to the lectern. Okay. Oh, okay.
Before General Raaen sits down, are there any questions anyone would like to ask the General while he's up here?
Yes, how do we get a copy of his notes?
Ask for them.
We can arrange for that. If several of you would like copies, we'll take care of making some copies. Any other questions before John sits down?
I hope not.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, before I turn the lectern back over to Matt, I just want to say again, thanks for coming. We do have residents here and some of the marketing staff. If any of you have any questions or anything you would like to get informationally, we have those. But enjoy the tours with our residents. I think you'll find them very worthwhile. Matt, thank you.